If you were wondering which commanders in Rise of Kingdoms were the very best ones to use your precious legendary commander sculptures on, this video has the answer for you. Whether you're brand new to the game or you're in the end game, this gives you the complete picture on the best legendary investments in Rise of Kingdoms. But hold on, something's not quite right. What? Hello? What's happening? Welcome to Honkai Star Rail, the sponsor of today's video. Honkai Star Rail is a new multi-platform space fantasy role-playing game from Hoyoverse, the makers of the very popular Genshin Impact. This is a role-playing game that features strategic, turn-based combat with large maps, maze exploration, and puzzle-solving gameplay. It's got epic combat, tons of characters and power-ups to collect, and an incredible anime art style that will pull you right into the story. You can even collect the character that had the audacity to hack this video, the Silver Wolf. She's one of the best hackers in the universe, and in combat, she uses her hacking abilities to add weakness effects to her enemies. Overall, she's a powerful support capable of solid damage output. Honkai Star Rail is available to download right now for Android, iOS, and even PC, and you can even unlock the Silver Wolf for yourself. Check out the pinned comment in the description to download the game and to try her out yourself, and be sure to use my promo code in that description and pinned comment to get 50 Stellar Jades that you can use to unlock new characters and weapons. Now that we've regained control of the video, let's talk about the legendary commanders in Rise of Kingdoms and this investment tier list. And I will remind you how this tier list works. And if you want to jump to any one part of the video, by the way, consider just using the timestamps in the description. And if this sort of stuff is valuable to you, learning about the best legendaries in the game, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss my next update to this list. First, we need to talk about these categories, and they go as follows. The top priority lists the legendary commanders that are so important you just do them first before anything else that's on the list. There needs to be a limit, however, to the number of commanders that are in this category, because you can't have everything be a top priority. At some point, you need to pick what's the one project I start on. So we have the low priority category, the next category, to differentiate between these are the first things you do, and this is what you would go do next. Then we've got a before Season of Conquest category, and I'm going to talk about that because that has to change. Then we'll talk about the niche role, which is commanders that have a very specific job. You only invest legendaries in them if you know exactly what you're doing, and you really need to know what you're doing. The Just Know category is going to expand a lot today. This is the commanders that really are not a good investment at all right now in Rise of Kingdoms, and the free category are the ones that, hey, you're going to get these for free just by virtue of opening gold keys and playing the game. So let's start by talking about where I placed Zhuge and Queen Dido, because you can see I've already updated the tier list to include them. And you've got Zhuge all the way at the top, all the way in the leftmost spot, which, by the way, I do try to prioritize from left to right, the most important on the left, the least important on the right. Zhuge absolutely is, I think, the #1 open field commander in the game. And you can rally with him, and you can garrison with him. He is Esong 3.0. We skipped Esong 2.0, and we went straight to Esong 3.0. He is insane. So his power level is really pushed through the roof. I think he is probably the best commander to work on in Rise of Kingdoms right now. And Queen Dido is a super badass garrison. She's made it into the niche role category because most people aren't garrisoning and shouldn't be worried about garrison commanders at all. But if you are going to garrison, she's a freaking unit. She is amazing, very, very strong, arguably some of the best garrisons in the game, which I will talk about in a future video. So that's where I've placed those two commanders, but now we've got to update the rest of the list. What changes? And the first category, whole category we have to go address is the before Season of Conquest section, because between now and the last time I did this video, they changed the rules for what commanders you can use in KVK Season 3. And you can use Season of Conquest commanders in KVK 3 now. So we have to change this designation to be before KVK 3 only, because now when you get to KVK Season 3, you can already use Zhuge Liang and unlock him. You can already use all these other amazing, powerful commanders. So this changes dramatically the commanders that are worthy of investing in the early game. And it changes it a lot, like an astonishing amount. This changes so much. First of all, Richard I, I don't think becomes a commander that is worth investing in anymore, because the reality is that you just don't have the sculptures for him, and then to do all the amazing projects you want to do when you get to KVK Season 3. So I'm going to put him down to niche role, because there is some cool stuff you can do with him and his instant proc slow. But otherwise, you really shouldn't invest in Richard I, because you have too many other projects. Martel becomes a hero or commander that you should only work on for free over time. He is really good, don't get me wrong. And I used to say, yeah, you could drop a couple sculptures into him, take him to 5-5-1-1 and use him. I just don't think you should do that anymore. I really don't. And similarly, I'm going to move Mehmed down to the niche role category. And I honestly, I'm going to bump him down to the free category. I changed my mind. You can get him for free from the gold keys. And with a double relic on Mehmed, he's amazing. But if you're in the early game, hello? Like, you need to save all your sculptures for KVK Season 3 when you can get literally access to the whole world of hyper-powerful endgame stuff. So along those lines, I need to put Saladin somewhere as well. And I guess we put him in niche role for now. I don't think he's a just no. I do think he can do some really cool stuff at 5-5-5-1. And there's some value to sort of having skills on him. But I think he also becomes a commander I can't recommend. I mean, you know, you get Saladin and then, you know, 3 to, I don't know what the exact amount of time is, but like 3 to 4 months later, you get the whole season of Conquest. Like, why put a single universal into him? Similarly, Alexander the Great shows up way too late. Alexander the Great shows up right before KVK Season 3. So even if you max spin his wheel, I mean, we could be generous and put him in niche role. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying, why put your sculptures into Alex when you could have put them into Alexander Nevsky, like just a few months later? So this dramatically shreds the number of viable investments before KVK Season 3 and before Season of Conquest. And I think that Esong, if you are a whale and you spend like crazy and you max spin the wheels, could still be an okay investment for your universal legendary sculptures, because your sculpture velocity is so high if you're a big whale. We'll leave Esong as one of the only commanders before KVK Season 3. The other commander we will leave there is Minamoto, because that is not using universal sculptures. That's just using money. And it's about $200, and you need to have the VIP for it. But when you put a couple relics on Minamoto, dude, he is awesome. The museum buff relics that you get, I think you get them now in KVK Season 3. They're great. So Minamoto remains worthy. And I'm not saying that a relic on Mehmed is bad or a relic on Martel is bad. I'm saying you only have so much of this relic currency to work with. If I'm going to pick 1 or 2 commanders to work on, it's going to be your Esong and your Minamoto, and that's already maybe too many projects. Most people shouldn't even touch the Esong. So now that we've updated the before KVK Season 3 category, we need to go look up to the top priority. And should there really be 2 archers in the top priority category? And I'm going to say no. I think we need to bump Boudica down to the low priority. I really only want to have 1 commander of each troop type in top priority if possible. And I think that the Joan Prime is actually just so strong that it's worth keeping her. But I'm going to bump the Boudica Prime down, and I'll move Joan Prime slightly to the right to differentiate that, you know, your really top 3 investments are Zhuge Liang, Nevsky, and then Skippy Prime. So from here, now we can talk about low priority investments. And this is where stuff gets really weird. It gets weird because we need to look at which commanders are kind of on the chopping block. And are these commanders going to be a good investment over time? And this is where I start to really struggle. I think Guan Yu is a commander I'm starting to struggle with. And also Artemisia is a commander that I'm struggling with. And allow me to elaborate that a little bit more. You see, For Guan Yu, I think his spot is kind of solidified in low priority for the following reason. Your best infantry commanders include Skippy Prime, you include Sargon, and if you're using multiple infantry marches, then you're certainly going to be using Guan. And then the next question is, okay, well, who's your last infantry commander? And right now, the answer is Tariq ibn Ziyad, but I think he would be replaced. So I feel like Guan can kind of stay in this low priority list because there is some other legendary that would be on the chopping block first before your Guan Yu. And his AoE silence is still really valuable, but make no mistake about it, it's all the other commanders that are carrying the weight of the Guan Yu, and the only thing he's really bringing you is a crazy silence. So he has been an amazing long-term investment in the game. I think he's still there for now, but at some point he'll be removed from that list. And I also am a little anxious about Artemisia. Why am I anxious? Well, if we talk about the best archers and some of the ways you could best pair your archers, you're looking at a combination that's something like Boudica paired with Zhuge Liang and Henry paired with Nebu. Well, there's no Artemisia there, but you could use Artemisia, and Artemisia is so good at just 5511. It's such a low sculpture investment to get the overwhelming majority of her punching power on the board. It's actually kind of crazy. So what you would do in that instance is something like Boudica with Artemisia, and then Zhuge Liang with like Nebu to get some march speed. Now, the reason that Nebu's not on here is that he's a little more difficult to obtain. He comes from the mightiest governor. And also the thing that's a little weird about Nebu is, I suppose at some point he could be kind of on the chopping block as well. But the weirdness with archers is that we just got new archers, and Boudica's still here. Okay, Boudica Prime and Artemisia is still really valuable. Nebu is still really valuable. So I think they're okay for now. Like, you've got at least another solid, let's call it 9 months, before you actually look at archers and think, some of these guys might be a bad invest because they might be imminently replaced. So you got a little bit of time for that one. So I think we can leave that as it is, and that's pretty good. We're going to keep William on this list exactly where he is because his area of effect rage and defense buff is insane. Sargon is just really, really powerful. If you have 5 marches or more that you bring on the field, he's very good. Very, very good. And those, I think, become your low priority investments. But now what? What about the niche role? And I'm going to be aggressive in cutting commanders out of niche role and putting them into the just no category. Not because I don't like them, not because they aren't valuable, not because they aren't good, but because compared to the other things you can invest in, you just have better projects. So let's start there. First up in niche role is XY, and he's going to stay for now. But XY is the 4th cavalry commander, which means if you're using 2 cavalry marches, the first commander you're going to get rid of is going to be XY. So if you're still investing in XY, you really need to know what you're doing and why you're putting those sculptures there, because he is very much on the chopping block, but he is still really good for the time being. So we'll leave him in niche role, but he's almost bumped down to the just no category. But for now, he is meta, and you just need to be really careful because when new calves show up, he's going to be the one I'm going to tell you to get rid of. From there, Honda Tadakatsu. He is a very good field commander, but should you invest in him now? And I'm just going to go with no. And this is probably going to be upsetting for some people. I have Honda. I find it upsetting. But when the developers added a double relic to Mehmed, I feel like what you get from a double relic Mehmed and what you get from a Honda is so similar that I don't understand why you would put sculptures into Honda Tadakatsu. I'm not saying Honda Tadakatsu is bad. Please understand. What I'm saying is, if you're going to put sculptures into a commander now, why would you put them in Honda? Just double relic your Mehmed and you're good to go. From here, let's talk about Leonidas. Poor Leonidas. You know, for a long time, I loved my Leo. And in 2023, as we enter into the summer, do I think that this is a good place to put sculptures? Well, if you knew what you were doing and you went 5-5-1-1, you could do something cool. But I generally feel like, what's the point of putting sculptures into a commander if it's not building into a long-term investment? So for now, I'm going to bump Leo down to the just no category. there's not really a reason that most people need him. I love you, Leo, and you are one of my favorites. With Guan, so good, but I gotta bump him down. Now, Tommy does retain her role in niche role because she does something very unique and powerful, and that's her 4th skill doing a skill damage taken debuff. Even Makote is still using Tommy when he swarms garrisons, and I was just in KVK with him. I literally saw him doing this. So Tommy has a niche role, and that remains. Trajan has a niche role and remains very powerful. Trajan is great if you have more than 5 marches in the open field. If you're only bringing 5, I think he's still good, but he only really starts to excel at the 6 and 7 march, and ideally, I think he is your 7th march that you bring to the open field. So he's still critical and meta, but I would say that it's a niche role. Most people aren't fielding 6 or 7 marches, so we're going to make sure to differentiate that. From here, Henry. I just mentioned how he's in the top archer pairs, especially for swarming garrisons. He is a great archer rally, but do I think most people should be working on Henry? Not necessarily. I think that some other archer will come along that's more suited to open field. I think Henry, however, if you do field and swarm garrisons, is really legit, super top tier. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, poor Amanatori, man. So Amani became far less relevant as soon as Queen Dido arrived. And Queen Dido basically replaced her. So is there a reason to invest in Amani right now? I just think the answer is no. So we bump her down. She once was a really cool garrison. Not anymore. We're going to leave Margaret and Bobber over here in the niche role category. I mean, it's a specific thing. You make towers, you shoot people, pew pew. It's okay. Maybe it will be better over time. Most people aren't going to be doing it. We're going to leave it here. It's a very specific thing. From there, we've got Attila Takeda, where I'm also going to say it's a very specific thing. It's interesting for obviously rallying lower powered cities and inflicting a bunch of dead troops, but you'd still rally a high power city, 100 million plus, with something other than Attila Takeda. But it still has a role. It still does really well cheeseburgering, popping out of cities and trading positive. We'll leave it here for now. Bertrand, interestingly enough, has a role. Apparently, it's a pretty solid rally against Queen Dido. I need to test this more and see for myself, but that's what I was hearing from some preliminary reports against Dido garrisons. So we'll leave him here. But other than that, he is tanky in the field, but not one of your first cavalry investments. From there, Chandragupta. Ooh, let me tell you. Chandragupta 3rd skill debuff is insane. I think you have better archers, or cavalry rather, to invest in. But if you were making 3 cavalry marches, you would probably include Chandragupta. So we'll include him in the niche role category for now. From there, we've got Gilgamesh. And what a weird one. I want to remove Gilgamesh from the niche role, honestly. He's got a role rallying Zeno, but like, is Zeno garrison even a thing anymore? I think that for now, I guess we leave it in niche role, but Zeno garrison is going to fade. I'm telling you right now, Zeno garrison, I think, is on its way out. As soon as we get a new infantry garrison, I think that'll cement that. So as long as Zeno is relevant, Gilgamesh will be relevant to counter her. But if there isn't some other healing garrison, Gilgamesh, we'll give him niche role for now, but otherwise, there's not a lot of reason to invest. Now, someone who really has exceeded my expectations recently is actually Pakal. The dude is amazing when you rally with Tariq ibn Ziyad. And I thought that in this last KVK, I'd be rallying with Tariq ibn Ziyad and Sargon. No, not but like 1 or 2 times where we went with the big damage rally with the Sargon secondary. We almost always went with Pakal for the anti-swarm. So that niche role, not really great for fielding, but otherwise just really solid for a rally. But I got to move Herald down. And I know that like Pakal Herald is a thing, but I just feel like it's kind of cringe to invest in Herald in 2023 going into the summer. Like, you just have better stuff to do, man. And I also want to bump Cyrus out of here. He's kind of cringe as an invest in 2023. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm saying, why would you put sculptures in a Cyrus when you have Zhuge Liang, Boudica, even like Esong and Aramesia and Nebu and Henry? Like, you've got so many other crazy archers right now. I just don't think Cyrus is where it is right now for where you put your sculptures. Now, At this point, we get into the garrisons, and there are a couple I just want to remove from here because I don't really think they have a role anymore. So Queen Dido and Hera are obviously legit. Constantine is amazing in Canyon. This one is interesting. Jadwiga. I think that you would probably not invest in Jadwiga at this point. I hate to say it, but like, I'll put her all the way at the back. I think Jadwiga is not a thing anymore. You would always use Jan Ziska. You use Jan with Hera, and that is a super legit endgame garrison right now. Wu Zetian is like not really a thing you would invest in. Okay. YSS is still really good. Xeno, ultra questionable. Could move this down to the just no category. Like, why would you pick this garrison over other things? But Theo. Theodora. GG. She once was cool for defending your city, and there might be like a role to swap her in temporarily as a secondary with like, maybe with Hera and Theo for defending your city, Theodora. Maybe. And then when you get below 50%, you switch to YSS, but I'm just going to bump her down, honestly. We're just going to bump her down. There's not a lot of reason to invest in her anymore. YSS, however, is pretty amazing. Flavius is still good. And I think that covers our niche role here. I'm debating removing some of these other ones like Saladin and Alexander the Great and Richard, but we'll leave them for now because if you were just a Kraken in the early game, I suppose there's a role for it. But otherwise, you're probably not investing in those commanders. So there are some commanders that are in this just no category that have remained here. Like, for example, CJ and Ramses. And the thing is, I have used these commanders. I have these commanders, and they are still good in the field. In fact, some people will argue CJ is great in the field, but there's nothing unique about them. Let me explain that. CJ only does damage. He has no critical debuff, and his damage is mostly single target. He is very uninspiring as far as legendary commanders go in Rise of Kingdoms. He doesn't have a unique effect that makes him relevant long past his expiration date, and eventually he'll just be replaced by someone else who does more damage, which, hey, I already mentioned how Tariq ibn Ziyad does more damage, and he replaced CJ in most open field murder balls. So, he is replaced. Ramses does a defense reduction and a heal interruption. And the thing is that you can get a defense reduction from Nevsky, and Nevsky's way better. You can get a defense reduction from XY, and XY is doing it area of effect. I'm not saying Ramses is bad. I'm just saying, why would you invest in him compared to all your other options? If you have him, I'm not saying don't use him. I'm just saying now's not a great time to start investing in him. See the difference? So from here, we can talk briefly about the free category. And I mean, there's only a little bit we want to say about this. These are gold key commanders, and Ethelfled is really good. Trajan with Ethelfled is what the #1 kill point player used in my last KVK. And he pulled down like 7 billion kill points. So it's got to be pretty good if he's using it. And last I checked, that's what 1960 is also using. Could be wrong on that. But it's still really good. So finding a home for your Ethelfled in your ball probably is pretty important. Because it still has a relevant spot. You just need the double relic from the museum, and you're off to the races. Otherwise, these are commanders you can get for free. Some of them you now can get from early game wheels, like Double C. You also can get them from the daily special offer. But I wouldn't be putting universal sculptures into these commanders. You get them for free, and you enjoy their value. Now, there is one other thing we do need to talk about as we get toward the tail end of this video, which is that there are now a number of KVK formats that benefit from having skills on other commanders. And for example, if you use the Orleans version of KVK or Heroic Anthem version of KVK, you have skills from one commander you can put onto another. And some of these commanders that I have in like the just no category or the niche role category have some really, really top tier skills that you can use in that capacity. Like, for example, you use the skill on Chandragupta that reduces the enemy's defense and health and also gives you cavalry health. That's an amazing auxiliary skill if you get your hands on it. So there are reasons to have skills on these other commanders, but as far as investing in them for use in the open field as a main commander, your top priorities now become Zhuge Liang, Nevsky, Skippy Prime, and Joan Prime. And your lower priority commanders now become Boudica Prime, William, Sargon. Guan is a little sus, but I think he stays on there. And also Artemisia is a little sus, but she stays on there, especially because at 5511, you pair with Boudica. If you're in the early game and you're trying to like bang out some investments so that you can like get a bunch of field marches together, the ability to just drop a tiny amount of sculptures and get Artemisia up and running at a pretty reasonable sort of pace is very valuable. And then your before KVK3 investments, at this point, I would say if you're spending, Minamoto is still wicked. And also Esong, if you spend big, will be worth doing. Otherwise, just save your sculptures because at KVK Season 3, you can get the stuff in the top priority. And that's what you should do. In terms of the composition of your marches, I generally would say that for a 5-march ball these days, the thing to do is 2, 2, and 1. That's 2 marches of one troop type, 2 marches of another troop type, and then 1 of the final troop type. You don't want to go all in on one troop type these days because the power level on the commanders is simply too high, and the new commanders outpace the old commanders so dramatically that you always want to be able to have that diversity of all troop types represented so you can use the best of each troop type as it's released into the game. And that, by the way, I covered in my previous video. I'll have a card in the end screen for that in just a minute if you want to see the best open field march combinations in the game. But if you found this video helpful, do me that huge favor of throwing a like on the video and consider subscribing, and consider checking out the sponsor of today's video. The link is in the description for everything you need, and definitely check out the promo code so you can get your extra free goodies when you download the game. Thank you again to Honkai Star Rail for sponsoring today's video. I hope you'll check them out in the description.